Consider this resolution: to devote myself completely to God's priorities for my life. It's the fifth of 13 resolutions that'll pave a path to greater usefulness to God and more joy and fulfillment in the life you're living. Priscilla Shirer was asked by the Kendrick brothers, who produced the movie Courageous, to provide this helpful resource, the resolution for women. What I didn't know is that Stephen and Alex first asked you to act in the movie, Priscilla, and you turned them down.
Well, I'm not an actress. But you know, the main reason was just because I would have had to be away from home for quite an extensive period of time, a few weeks. And it was right at the end of the school year when the boys were getting out of school and when we were diving into the summer months together. And so the timing just didn't work out. But you know, the Lord had other plans anyway, because it was several months later that they decided they needed a companion piece for women to go along with the movie. And the resolution for women is what they asked me to partner with them in writing. You
were telling me that you were reluctant to say yes to this because you typically do, whether it's a Bible study on tape or a book, and you've done many books and Bible studies, it comes from your own heart.
Yeah.
This was something from the outside. Why did you say yes?
Well, I said yes because I loved the theme, the idea that women are coming together around a set of resolutions that will reshape us into the women that God has called us to be. I mean, that's all of what I believe God's ministry that He has for us and has entrusted to us. That's really what it's about. But also because I met the Kendrick brothers, and I met Michael Catt, and I sat with these gentlemen around over dinner, and we talked about the project that was coming, the movie Courageous, and then the accompanying books. And when I saw their heart for the Lord, their genuine love for His people, their desire not for the lights and fame of Hollywood, but really to see how they could use maybe that vehicle of entertainment just to impact people, call marriages back together, and call women and men to be who God has called them to be. When I saw that, I was on board right away.
And we're so glad that you said yes. Wonderful book. Now, your dad's a well-known pastor, Tony Evans, and you know that the #1 question that pastors are asked to respond to is, how do I know God's will for my life?
Yes.
You and your husband, Jerry, have made some courageous decisions, and it's rooted in a love of God and a commitment to prioritize according to His good, pleasing, and perfect will.
Yeah.
How do we make that grabbable for people?
You know, that's really what this particular resolution is all about, giving my best, because a section of that resolution says to give the best of ourselves in our time and our talents to the priorities that God has for us in this season. See, that's the dividing line there. It's making sure that you know in this season what He's called you to give your best to. Otherwise, you're spreading yourself so thin, nothing's getting the best of you. And so really determining what that is. And honestly, it does mean making some hard decisions. It's meant that for my husband and I, particularly for my husband in one specific area, in that you know, he came from a line of men that were not responsible in their family life. He did not grow up with a father in his home. Grandfather did the same thing. Uncles really were not really responsible to their families. And yet he decided he was going to be different for his boys. And what that meant was leaving a very prestigious, high-paying executive job in order to...
With Hilton Hotels.
Yeah.
Is it okay to say that?
Yes, it's okay. He had a great career there, great friends there, was really on an upwardly mobile path, and yet the hours that would be spent in the office and away from his children once we started having our boys, he just determined that wasn't the kind of dad he wanted to be, because the residue of having a father that was not present was something that he remembered and was all too familiar with. And he just decided he still didn't, even though he wasn't leaving our family, he didn't want to be in the home and still not be present, because he was so busy at a demanding career. And so he really did sort of give up a lot. And yet he thinks that he has gained so much more. And that is an opportunity to invest so fully in his boy's life and pass on a blessing that only a father can pass on to a son. And that's something he never had. And I just love the fact that he's willing to give that to our boys.
What stood out to me when he was with us last Wednesday on the program, it was the reality that he was leaving the house before the boys were awake. And coming home after they'd gone to bed.
When
he was
had
literally
that job,
missing.
He was literally missing the whole day. And so he would come home and I would be half awake, you know, from the day with the kids, but not really. And the boys were already in bed. He'd kiss them. At the time, one was just very, very little. He would kiss him and then come and talk to me for a few minutes. And then we were both out for the night. And he just decided that was not the legacy he wanted his boys to have. And so he made a very courageous decision by choosing to come and work with Going Beyond Ministries. He really formed and founded Going Beyond Ministries and made it what it is today.
Which is your ministry.
Yeah, together we get to partner in ministry together, and the boys get to see a father who's very busy, definitely productive and working hard, and yet he has time to be at breakfast with us in the morning and to take his boys to school and to pick them up in the afternoon and to have dinner with us around the table. You know, when the school calls and says, you know, we need one of you to come up to the school, something's going on. Well, me or his dad or their dad can come. And that's a gift that so many people aren't able to give to their children, or don't determine and decide and resolve to give to their children. And I'm grateful that Jerry has.
So picture Dad finishing breakfast with Mom and the boys and going to the office in a transformed barn on the back of the property. I love that. I've seen that kind of arrangement before. And
it's just a barn, and his office is upstairs, and he goes there and we do the work of the Lord from that little 2,000 square foot barn. That's what we do. And that's what this resolution is really about giving your best to whatever the primary roles are that the Lord has called you to in that season. For you, it might be being a single woman, or being a mother of small children, or being a grandmother and investing in the life of your grandchildren. What is it that he's called you to do right now? Do it 100%. Give your best.
I love your emphasis on seasons. And, you know, discerning what season of life is this? Because, you know, maybe you've got to put career on the back burner right now for kids. It'll come to the front burner. I think it's safe, too, to say that God's priorities are very clear, and that it is God first.
Yeah.
And then if you're married, your husband is next.
Absolutely.
I mean, squeaky wheel gets the grease, so the kids are going to call for it more, but it's husband first, then children, and then work.
Absolutely.
And it's so hard in this culture to keep the proportions in the right place.
You are so right. It gets out of balance so easily and so quickly, which is why a resolution like this is so important. Because unless you resolve and determine and plan and strategize as to how you're going to keep those priorities in place, then it's not going to automatically fall into place. You really have to say, if my husband's first, if he's primary, then what does this look like in a month of our lives? How am I going to schedule and plan in and make sure that he feels like and knows that he really is significant to me?
Wow, I wish we had longer on this one. This one is they're all important.
We could spend some time on this one, couldn't we, sister?
We could really do time on this. But let me show you the words of the resolution, the full meal deal. The graphic here says, I will seek to devote the best of myself, my time and my talents to the primary roles the Lord has entrusted to me in this phase or season of my life.
Yes, that's a good word, seasons of life, because the seasons change just like they do in our weather patterns. They will change. And so right now, maybe you have to say no to a whole lot of things so that you can say yes and devote yourself fully to what it is God has called you to. And those no's feel like a big sacrifice. Well, just like in the weather, the seasons will change, and pretty soon those no's will become your yeses. And so if you'll just give yourself fully to what the Lord has called you to right now, you will see that in the right time, you'll be able to devote yourself wholly to the next thing that the Lord allows to come into a new season of your life.
You know, I met a woman very recently who was in investment, very well-paid job, and her daughter was struggling in the high school years with really serious depression.
Yeah.
And she left her job and came home for her daughter, who thanks her today for that sacrifice. But it's very interesting that out of that obedience, because she felt God calling her home, her daughter was in need. God birthed first through her, and now her husband has come on board to help manage her jewelry business.
Wow.
And it's growing like crazy. I hope we'll be able to tell her story. But it is an illustration of God rewarding obedience. You never go wrong when you do what he says.
Isn't that the truth? And, you know, even in our own lives, we have one son now that struggles a little bit in traditional schooling, and we're just looking at that a little bit more closely and seeing what that means. And Jerry and I have really had to take a hard look at our lives and at each other and say, you know, what if this calls for a total shifting and transformation as what we're doing right now with school, and how that looks if we need to bring everybody home and homeschool, and what is that going to look like? And are we willing to devote ourselves fully and completely to the season of life that God puts us in, regardless of if it looks completely different than what we had in mind originally? Hard questions to ask yourself.
You know, I'm going to squeeze this in because it's so eye-opening. Jesus said, in Matthew 5:48, and you bring this out because we're talking about my best.
Yeah.
Jesus said, be perfect, even as your heavenly Father is perfect. Well, talk about intimidation.
Yeah.
Especially for people on a performance track.
Exactly.
You enlighten us about the meaning of that command.
Well, you know, I so felt that that was so important, Moira, because the call to be your best, the resolution to give your best, well, automatically for a perfectionist, you know, that just kind of sends your heightened, you know, senses up in terms of wanting everything to be
More
the
pressure.
best and perfect. More pressure, and that's all you need. You know, that's all we need as women is more pressure. And so when we think about the scriptural command and encouragement to be perfect, we need to understand that that word actually meant to be whole and complete and lacking in nothing. Wow. And so when we go along with the Lord's command to be perfect, it is not a complete to be faultless. It is not a command to be faultless and for everything to be completely straight with no mess and no chaos. What it means is that we want this area of our life to be whole and complete, to come to fruition as God planned it. And so when we're looking at it from that sense, it doesn't mean that we do everything completely accurate and that there are no problems and hiccups in life. I mean, who's that going to happen for? We'll drive ourselves nuts trying to make that happen. But if we say, Lord, what does the complete picture look like? What does it look like when all the puzzles of this thing fall into line? Help me, Lord, to be someone that can help this project, this season of my life, to end up in a way that is whole and complete and lacking in nothing.
There is so much more in this picture. You need to get the book or books. The Resolution for Women, The Resolution for Men. Look at this.
I want to know what God expects of me.
The Resolution for Men by Stephen and Alex Kendrick strategically inspires men to reconcile with their past, re-engage in their present, and move forward with a bold resolution for the future.
The Resolution for Women by Priscilla Shirer challenges all women to be intentional about thriving in God's calling on their lives, to bless and change things in their world for the better.
The Resolution for Men and Women is a movement intended to help strengthen your family, community, and our nation to become fully resolved. It's our thanks to you for your support.
We invite you today to become a Crossroads Foundation member with a monthly pledge of $30, a Builder member at $60 a month, or a Crossroads Council member at $100 per month.
We would like to send you a copy of one or both of these books. Please call 1-888-288-0003 with your membership pledge or special gift. You can also write us or visit crossroads.ca.